boys are obviously saluting their general who saved Big Ten football, and that's kind of what we brought you in here to chat about is college football. And we appreciate you, Bob, for doing that. But college football is looking a little bit different, it seems like, about a year from now. Transitions are happening all over the place. What are your thoughts on where the Big Ten sits currently, and where do you think everything ends up with college football, Bob?
Man, it's wild. I mean, if you look at this, Pat, I don't think a year ago anybody would have anticipated getting here. And this seemed like it was going to be the year that was much more laid back. You know, we had Texas, we had Oklahoma 2 years ago, USC and UCLA, the announcement last year. And this season, I'm like, all right, you know, maybe Buffalo or the Colorado Buffaloes are flirting with maybe going back to the Big 12, but that would potentially be it. Everybody acknowledge, hey, the Pac-12, they're probably going to slide off into the Pacific Ocean eventually. But hey, you know what? It's going to be fine for this last year. And then lo and behold, I go up to Canton this weekend and the world falls apart. I'm trying to keep track of what's going on with college football. Oregon, Washington, hopping in the Big 10, the Arizona schools in Utah, they're jumping to the Big 12. Now you have 4 teams just sitting out there left on the West Coast trying to figure out where the heck they belong and who they fit with. And the problem is geography. I don't know if there's enough teams out there then that are big enough that would worthy like a major style conference that would be equal to what the Pac-12 was.
Go ahead, AJ.
Bob, so ultimately, let's say 5 years from now, how many conferences do you think there are in college football? And, like, is there any chance, like, let's say the Big Ten, they're going to keep adding teams. Are they going to start booting teams too? Can they kick people out?
Well, that's the question right there. I think a lot of people wouldn't probably mind if there was a couple teams that exited the Big Ten and the chances of possibly bringing in maybe like a Notre Dame,
West
maybe
Virginia.
a North Carolina or whoever. I mean, if you can get those schools, you like that. But the reality is I don't think you're going to boot anybody. We haven't seen that happen. That would be unprecedented. I think they probably end up going to probably a 3-team conference format. You're talking the Big Ten, you're talking the SEC, and then probably some compilation over the next 10 years of the Big 12 and ACC kind of getting poached around. And, you know, a couple teams join the Big 10, a couple teams join the ACC or SEC, and then all of a sudden, you know, whatever's left kind of merges together. And that's kind of it. And it was a remarkable age. I remember having a conversation with Jim Tressel, our head coach, probably like 2008. And he told me, he's like, in 20 years, there'll be, you know, 4 major conferences, like 16 to 18 teams apiece. And I thought he was crazy because I'm thinking, no way that these conferences are going to merge. They're going to fall apart like that. And then lo and behold, it might not even be 4. It maybe looks more like 3, and it's happened way faster.
Yeah, that Pac-12 fell apart overnight with that Apple deal being announced or presented at least to the teams. Like, hey, you'll get $23 million and a chance, get subscribers, a little bit more money.
Okay.
Like, wait a minute, everybody else is getting like 30, 40 million everywhere else. Yeah, you guys could get 60, 70.
Think about it.
How many people click on the link? You know, you'll do that. And they're all like, peace, we are out of here. That seemingly took place overnight. Excited to watch what happens this year. This is the last year of all these people in these things. It's like we're taking the tractor another round.
Yeah, we are.
Right.
Last time.
But last time,
Yeah,
only one more round.
Yeah.
We're taking this whole thing. Let's enjoy it. I think the good thing, though, Bob, if you start looking around, seemingly all the big rivals were going together. So we're still keeping the rivalries, I think, which is probably a massive piece of it for the presidents and also for the overall state of college football. Do you agree with that?
Well, we are keeping some. I mean, you look at the Big Ten, most of those are held intact. You know, Oklahoma and Texas, they're moving together. USC and UCLA are moving together. But, man, like, I grew up, you know, we're all about the same age. I didn't watch a whole lot of Washington State football, but I'd watch the Apple Cup. You know, I'd go watch the Civil War with Oregon and Oregon State. You know, you go watch Bedlam with Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Like, those are all fractured now. And that does hurt me a little bit. I mean, I'm a fan of nostalgia. I love what college football represents. I understand we're in a different era now, and like I'm not the old man just hammering on my wall, yelling it's clouds and drinking beers on the front lawn. I understand what it means, but in reality too, that doesn't mean I can't be sad because I like to wake up a little hungover on the Friday after Thanksgiving. You know, I'd flip on Washington State and feel better about myself.
Yeah, well, listen, some other game will step in there, hopefully.
Iowa, Nebraska, baby. Still
But
got
to
it.
your point, though, like Oregon-Washington's a big rivalry, though. So, like, that survives, I guess, with the move to Big Ten. But those interstate battles are definitely getting left by the wayside. What's this Arizona State guy saying he's not coming to Morgantown? Hey, pal, you fucking stink worse than us. We don't care you're not coming. Just to finish the college football conversation, I don't like that guy talking the way we get it. Scottsdale, is awesome.
Sure.
Yeah.
George, love it.
Okay, it is beautiful. We love it as well. But, pal, you go to Morgantown, maybe it'll teach you to have a little bit of something you clearly don't have, which is a little bit of gut sack, pal. Okay, go breathe some West Virginia air out
He's
there.
building the rivalry.
Be a little bit
Listen,
tougher.
I'll tell you this, Pat. Not to slurp up your alma mater, but I will say for game day experience, your West Virginia Mountaineers, they're bringing it. They're coming.
Thank you.
Wow.
It is a strong, strong environment. The folks there, it's an event. They look forward to it. And if you go there, buddy, you better bring your work boots and lunch pail because it's going to be a full day of libations and party times.
And your hard hat, because there's something.
Someone coming.
There's a potential some things flying out there, and that's, like I've been to a couple other colleges and they have their big event or whatever. Like here in Indiana, it's a Little Five. At these other schools, they have like these kind of school things where the alumni come, it's a big party or whatever. That's every single home game in West Virginia. The entire state comes to every single home game in West Virginia. So obviously the stadium can only hold 60, 70,000, whatever it is. The motherfuckers out in the parking lot still. The whole place is shut down. It's hard to get to. It's difficult to get to. But you're coming to our fucking conference, pal. Okay? We run the Big 12 now. All right? West Virginia, we're beating Penn State week 1.
Of course. Prime time.
Sorry about it, Big 10. You didn't want us either. Yeah. So this is what you got to deal with. Then we're going to beat Duquesne by 1,000.
Maybe.
Then we're playing against Pitt, beating them by 100.
Sure.
And then we're just off and running, and this whole Arizona State guy can pipe down. Now, there's a chance we lose those games.
All of them.
Every single one of them.
Yep.
And then when Rich Rod comes back to town, he will fight that
Yeah.
that athletic director from Arizona State, and I can't wait for that. All of this movement out of the Pac-12 to the Big 10 and to the Big 12 is all because the Apple deal was nowhere near what the Pac-12 schools thought it was going to be? Or can you take us back to why the Pac-12 now only has 4 schools and what we should look for next?
Yeah, well, in the micro, Pat, the most important trigger here was that the Pac-12 schools wanted to stay out west. Like, it was sensible. So a year ago, USC and UCLA leave. They basically can double their TV revenue every year. Think roughly 70 million to roughly 35 million. They could not say no to that. So those two go. You have 10 schools left, and those 10 schools generally thought, okay, we can function as a West Coast conference. We can still, Oregon and Washington are the bell cows, and we will just continue to roll on here out west. But the problem was that the first real trigger that sent this down the spiral where we are now is that the Pac-12 has 1 year left on its television contract. The Big 12 has 2. The Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark, basically jumped in line and said, boom, I'm going to renegotiate early with ESPN and Fox and push out for 7 more years. So all of a sudden, there was not a lot of money and then not a lot of television windows left for the Pac-12. So they had to go. They were scrambling for about a year to find a TV deal. They found one with Apple, and it just wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. The exposure was uncertain. The money was fluid. It was going to be somewhere in the 20s. But if you had this many subscribers, it would go up. That scares college presidents. Remember making these decisions, guys. So like college presidents are the most risk averse. They would prefer inertia over risk.
For the students, you mean, right? For the students.
Yes.
Yeah, for the good of
Yes.
Presidents of universities care about the students first and foremost.
Correct.
Is what you're talking about here?
A little bit of that. They really care first and
you're
foremost
talking about the
keeping
money.
their job.
Oh, the money is what you're talking about. So it's a fascinating kind of situation because, like, in our world, podcasting and digital media, there's a lot of companies that you do a deal with where they'll say, we'll give you $500, but also you get $4 for every sign up that you get through this link here. It's called an affiliate deal, rev share deal. They try to sell it to like early podcasters that don't really have a brand as a chance to prove it, and then our next deal will be something different. So like our company, I will not agree to those deals at this stage of where we are, just because like we might introduce somebody to a company, but then they forget our promo code or they don't use our link, and then 2 weeks later they do it. It's like, well, we certainly still sent it, but we don't do it. Part of the process though, gotta get through that. Every digital company has to do that. If I'm the president of a university and I'm being pitched an affiliate deal, I would be fucking offended too. You know? Like I would be pretty offended by it. Like, that's just bad business. Because how do you know they're going to sign up through your link, and how will they be able to? Then the transparency that has to happen between Apple and the link, and also you and your accounting department and their accounting department. It all just gets really sticky in there. And I think this is a digital deal, which is what Apple was trying to present there. So I could see. But did Kliavkoff. Did he think that
George K, for future reference.
George K. All right, shout out. Commissioner of Pac-12, which might no longer be a conference anymore.
Good run.
He thought that was going to be more. He thought that these schools would be cool with the affiliate deal. What did he think?
Well, George K basically got a bad hand and managed to make it worse. He's been the commissioner now. He took over for a bad commissioner, Larry Scott, who lasted way too long. The Pac-12's problem, Pat, is rooted in apathy of the fan bases that didn't care enough to rally around their network. And then the former commissioner, Larry Scott, had a horrible network plan that never got distribution. And through the life of their last TV deal that expires this year, 12 years, they were actually the highest paid league when it started for a couple of weeks before the SEC did a deal. But that deal started with such promise. Then network didn't take off. Larry Scott turned into a dud. The presidents didn't realize it, never fired him because they were paying him too much money. And 6-8 years in his tenure, when it was an abject disaster, they just sort of rode with him as long as they could. They finally parted ways. They brought in George K. He had worked at MGM and been in business, and he just did not adapt well to college athletics. There's really no other way to put it. He worked there about 2 years, and I wrote this last week. Like, he actually, when his final words are written, like, he never actually accomplished anything. Like, he never had like, we did this great deal, or we did this with our conference championship game, or we did, like, he's been there 2 years and essentially nothing has happened. It's been a Seinfeld tenure, for lack of a better way to put it. And so now, again, you could have Winston Churchill trying to negotiate these deals. You have the Pac-12, which isn't the sexiest product. You have a lot of the money taken up. We're not in a bull market right now economically. The media companies, especially 6 months ago, were really regressing. And like, there's only so many television windows left, right? Like, when you look at ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, Fox, FS1, like, there's literally only so many 3-hour blocks to put these games. And that was one thing that really got in the way of the Pac-12, was like, there was nowhere for them to go. And that's why streaming ended up becoming a mainstream thing for them.
I think it's interesting because allegedly Amazon was in on the Big Ten and NBC ended up winning. And NBC ended up winning even though they didn't bid as much as Amazon did, but because they still have the traditional network as well. And it was kind of like, I don't want to say my speech at Upfronts, but kind of like my speech at Upfronts. We're at this very interesting time right now where, like, linear television is obviously still a thing, still very powerful. Numbers are huge, 6.3 million for the Hall of Fame game on Thursday. Numbers for everything are up. But digital has the infrastructure now to really be able to compete. The banks behind it, the amount of money behind it, the reach, the access, the convenience on how to get there. Where, like, maybe 5 years ago, the Amazon Thursday night thing with the NFL would have been just a no way. That is way too difficult. Now it feels like society's getting more used to the streaming platforms. So everybody wants to get in on live sports. You would have thought that George K, for this conversation, who I've met, were you at the dinner? You were at the dinner that I was at, right, with him, I think?
I don't know if I was at the dinner you were at, but I know George. Yeah.
So
was that in Eugene, maybe, Pat?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you were there. Yeah. So that was when I met him or whatever. Seemed like a good guy. Seemed like a nice guy.
Good guy.
So I don't
really nice guy, bright guy.
I don't want to judge him as a human, but there's definitely deals to get done now. Don't you think? You got to sell it, I guess. But, like, live sports is all anybody wants right now. Apple wants it, obviously. They not as much as, I guess, all those schools thought they would want it. But I wonder if that's because there wasn't any competition, because you need another bidder to kind of run that thing up. I don't know how you're not able to get a deal done, especially whenever you have 2 LA schools in there. Now, granted, they're gone, but you get them out of there. Oregon has Nike, right? Like, Nike is Oregon, and, like, Washington's getting real good. I'm fascinated by it, bro. I'm really, really fascinated about how they weren't able to get a deal. Now that turns to another conference. Let's talk about it. The ACC. I guess 7 schools in the ACC have had their lawyers look at their TV deal. They can't get out of it unless they all pay $120 million or something like that. But their deal's until 2036. That is a long time. What do they look like with all this movement with the Big Ten, the Big 12, and obviously the SEC has teams going in? The ACC has no teams jumping into the ACC. The Pac-12 has everybody bailing.